Welcome to another edition of our Chartered Quality Institute Deming Special Interest Group interview series, a series where we examine the teachings and learning from the Deming philosophy. Today, we are fortunate to have Mr. Eric Budd of the Institute for Quality and Innovation share with us his insights into the relevance of the Deming philosophy. So welcome, Eric.
I'm really glad to be here, Chris, and I really appreciate the invitation. It's a joy to meet with you and have an opportunity to talk about Dr. Deming.
It's really our privilege. So Eric, while you're at it, could you share with us a little more about Eric Budd and also share with us some of the work of the Institute for Quality and Innovation?
Sure, I'd be happy to. You know, my career in organizational improvement started when I actually refused to do some of the quality homework we were given from the Phil Crosby Quality College while I was working at GM EDS People Systems Division. Now, PSD, or People Systems Division, is a 400-person division that ran all of General Motors human resource computer systems, hourly and salary payroll, pension and retirement. That was the group I worked in. Personnel, unemployment, and so on. While I was in college, I worked at a company called Signetics. It was an integrated circuit manufacturing facility that followed Crosby's definition of quality, which is conformance to requirements. And when I was at a station called Etch and Etch Inspect. And when I wanted to fail a batch of circuit wafers that failed to meet the minimum lead width requirements, our process engineer, who was being held responsible for his numbers, crossed out the old requirement and wrote up new ones on the run card right there as we were speaking. And with the rewritten requirements, he passed the batch of circuit wafers. And then I realized I saw the fatal weakness in Crosby's definition of quality. If the requirement side of the equation could be changed just to pass a product in order to meet targets, Crosby's definition of quality really meant nothing. And so I was called into my boss's office, Prudence Cole, to explain why I wasn't doing my homework for the division effort. And when I told her about my concern about this definition and its lack of meaning, she asked me to complete my homework and then I made that promise. Later on, she became the division president. And because of my commitment to quality, one of her first actions was to name me as her division quality advisor. So here I was refusing to do my Crosby Quality College homework, and it turned into me becoming the quality advisor for the division. And then when she became division president, she said, I'm supposed to be a quality leader and I don't know what to do. Do I walk around saying quality, quality, quality? Like, some leaders just don't understand what they should be focused upon. So at this time, EDS was deeply connected with Deming's work on the General Motors account. He was active at GM Powertrain. He was leading 4-day seminars for General Motors. And I began to learn about his ideas by attending and then working at several of his 4-day seminars. I had an opportunity to be one of the assistants at the seminars. I met a lot of great people who worked around Dr. Deming at that time. And one of these people was Mary Jenkins, who was the GM leader of salaried personnel at GM Powertrain, where Deming was testing his ideas. Deming had asked Mary Jenkins to implement his ideas in human resource practices and systems. And it was through her and with partnership with her that we began the Academy for, at that time, Quality Fundamentals. It has now become the Academy for Leadership Fundamentals. And the group we were working with was originally called Capital Quality Initiative. Today it's called the Institute for Quality and Innovation. So when we started doing this work with the Academy, we realized that not everyone has access to a useful introduction for how to apply Deming's system of profound knowledge. And just reading about the system of profound knowledge and spending time learning how to apply it are very different learning experiences.
So
So
true.
yes, so reading is much different than actually trying to attempt to apply it. Now, in one of his seminars, I heard Dr. Deming chide a manager in his seminars who said, "How am I supposed to implement your principles in my company?" And Dr. Deming's response was, "You want me to do your job for you?" And and what happens is, many managers survive their early education by asking, "Will this be on the test?" rather than developing the skills to think and learn for themselves. So they're used to having answers given to them rather than learning on their own. And so every organization's conditions are unique, and it would have been irresponsible for Deming to give out how-to instructions. Rather, Deming provided a method for learning while doing.
I think
And
that's what you're saying there is so important, because this is where, the topic for today actually comes out of this whole wasteful pursuit of the instant pudding. So many
yes,
managers, leaders, organizations are out there seeking to have 10 steps, 5 steps, the quality, the transformation, the continual improvement in innovation. Just adopt this method without really paying attention to their real context, their unique context, and so on. You know, sorry to cut, but I just felt that it was such an important segue into keeping, tied to the topic for today in terms of this wasteful pursuit of instant pudding that so many
yes.
of us are seduced by.
And your example of give me a 7-step or 10-step approach to things is the pursuit of instant pudding. We just want something we can check off our list and say we did it, and then things will get better. But that's not how our organizations work. And so that's what Deming was trying to tell this manager in a very kind of abrupt way. But it's like he doesn't want to do people's jobs for them. He doesn't want to do the thinking. He wants people to learn how to think for themselves, because instant pudding doesn't work in every situation. That's why Deming thought copying or benchmarking was a bad idea. That's another version of instant pudding, is just copying what somebody else is doing and then finding out, oh, it doesn't work in our situation because we have different circumstances or a different context.
Different capability, different competence, different capacity.
Exactly.
So why do you
Yeah.
believe that the work of Deming is so relevant today? Because especially, I know recently I saw a debate on LinkedIn regarding the whole question of relevance and persons sharing the idea that, oh, Deming is irrelevant to, our current context. So why do you, Eric, believe that it's so relevant today?
Yeah, I think here, let me, I'll go forward to this. So
Oh, great.
this is a great question. And what happens is when we have the need for organizational change or improvement, it appears that people are being constantly seduced by instant pudding, right? So there's a need for us to pay attention to what's going on in our environment. So in the business world, this is a Standard & Poor's stats from the past since 1950. We look at the average lifespan of businesses that were listed on the Standard & Poor's 500. And although average lifespan varies by region, the question of corporate survival has become a top in the mind of companies as we grapple with how to move forward in an increasingly challenging business environment. Credit Suisse has shown that the average age of a company listed on the Standard & Poor's 500 fell from nearly 60 years in the 1950s to less than 20 years today. Another problem that we see in the United States, and companies in other regions of the world experience similar survival problems, is about 1/3 of new businesses do not make it past their second year, and half are gone after 5 years. So the idea that we can follow the checklist of how to do things in our individual businesses is problematic, and we need leaders who can learn and know how to learn on a regular basis. We also see one of the challenges that we have with employees today is we have employees in our organizations who need acknowledgement, want acknowledgement. They want to be developed in their careers, and they want to be engaged in their work. And Deming's philosophy does these things as people begin to apply them. And another reason Deming's work is relevant today is he identified over 37 years ago the 7 deadly diseases of management, and these continue to afflict us. So we see in our organizations lack of constancy of purpose. And every time someone reads a new list of something to do, a new checklist of here's new instant pudding ideas, all of a sudden, they take a right turn and they take their organization in a different direction, or they have a different approach. There's an emphasis on short-term profits. We see that with the disaster that happened with Southwest Airlines. As soon as the accountants took over the business, they started paying shareholders all sorts of large money and payouts over the last several years rather than investing deeply in the organization. And then, of course, we see things like evaluation of performance and merit ratings. There's still an understanding or a belief in individual performance rather than an appreciation for a system like Dr. Deming has talked about. So on, we see these problems with us. And then we've got these obstacles. And first on Dr. Deming's list is hope for instant pudding that gets in the way of our ability to actually do improvement. And then he lists other things that include search for examples. If you spend any time on LinkedIn, everybody's looking for an example of some way that they can copy something that'll work in their world, rather than develop the understanding of the theory that's required to make improvement happen. So this popped up, as we were talking about this. What we need here is a long-term quick fix, and there's no such thing. It's one of those things that we constantly are being seduced by, like you said, instant pudding. So then we can ask this question. You asked this question of me, and I don't know if you want me to go into this, but we've got this idea of
definitely. I do want you to share with us some of your thoughts in relation to the system of profound knowledge being framed as a map of theory, and what makes this map of theory different, especially in the context of it not being a specific method or program, and how does it help?
Yes. So when we think about theory, it's one of those things that seems challenging for us to work with, and yet our minds and brains function with theory all the time. We make predictions constantly about what we're going to touch, what we will see, what we will hear, and through movement of our senses, we interrogate the world, we receive inputs, and then we evaluate our predictions. Is that what I expected? Now, there's some other things that happen, is that our theories either allow us to or prevent us from seeing something that's right in front of our eyes. So we ask this question. This is a simple question we ask in the Academy, and I'm gonna ask you, Chris, to answer this question. So which one of these three is least like the others? I'll give you just a second or two to think about this. Which is least?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on quite a number of factors in the sense that when it requires for me to have an operational definition of least.
Yeah. What do we mean by least, and what do we mean by like? What do we mean by like the others?
True.
Yeah, and so this is a bit of a trick question, because we look at this list, we see 31, 13, and 1/3, and those are the things that we evaluate because we're so used to looking at something in a certain way. And yet what really shows up is this is what's the least like the others. So as we look at our list, what we've done is we've excluded automatically the bullet points, and we don't see them as something we're considering. And that happens in our organizations all the time. Our theory about what we should be seeing and what we should be looking at are connected to how we perceive the world. And because we have a perception of things, we don't actually understand that, oh, the 1, 2, 3 bullet points are also one of the things that we're asking, which of these is least like the others? When we include these, we have, what are these? We didn't even count the 1, 2, 3, did we? And so now we see that, our theory about what we should be seeing limited our ability to understand what's happening in front of us. And that's what happens in our organizations.
And it also shows too that how, because again, the boundaries were determined by how you define the lease and stuff like that. So 1, 2, and 3 is actually part of the boundaries. But quite often we overlook 1, 2, and 3 altogether. I just look at the numbers after the point.
Exactly.
So that is so important. But you could continue to share.
Sure. And there's another relationship to theory. Without a useful map of theory to guide us, trying a new way of working is like getting lost in an unfamiliar environment. And so to better understand the difference between those two types of models, we could compare the 20-year careers of a London bus driver and a London cabbie. So a London bus driver has expert path knowledge, very deep knowledge about a single method of performing their work, not unlike a lot of people in our organizations. They do the same job every day, year after year, and they have expert knowledge of the exact way to handle their work. They know the path to drive, they know the timing of the lights, they know who the regular passengers are, those kind of things. Now, the cabbie has expert territory knowledge. They're able to navigate to new neighborhoods and locations without even having ever been there before. And what happens is, if you ask that bus driver to now navigate to a new area of the city, they'll get lost because they have no ability, they have no concept beyond how to do things along their path. So according to Numenta founder and brain researcher Jeff Hawkins, our brain builds knowledge of the world by creating maps or reference frames, both physical and conceptual. And when faced with organizational change, our maps and reference frames determine whether or not we get lost or whether or not we're capable of discovering a new path. And so the map of theory allows us to actually traverse new experiences, new challenges in a way that people who have regular experience, the people who create those checklists for us, the checklist is like following a path. Here's a path I know, but now we're on a new path, and that path I know is not the path I need to follow. So we need a new way to learn and to challenge ourselves. So one of the things that you asked me about also was...
Yeah, definitely. I want to actually pose that question.
Yeah.
Actually, because it's so important that, because there is a dominant mode besides being seduced by instant pudding, that quality is, if it's not about inspection, it's also about just finding tools and the dominant mode of operation is to implement tools and techniques to solve problems. And it's as if all quality is about is firefighting and making change by firefighting as a means of managing change and improvement. So solving problems is really seen as this pathway to transformation. And I know in the Deming teachings, that this is not the only way. So what would the teachings of Dr. Deming really suggest as it pertains to this dominant mode of firefighting that we currently see in quality?
I think one of the things Deming suggests is that while putting out a fire might be necessary, putting out a fire does not improve the building. So the same thing happens with our organizations. If there are fires burning in our organization, problems that we are experiencing are red beads, issues that we need to deal with, putting them out does not address the sources of the fires. And many of our management methods actually set fires or create problems. And these fire starting behaviors by managers include things like setting targets without a method, because then if people don't have a method to achieve their targets, then they'll do anything, including fudge the numbers or game the system to meet their targets. Individual performance appraisals is another fire starting method that managers use. Generating competition between people and departments for resources that show up in things like annual budgets and allocations. Treating suppliers as adversaries rather than partners starts to create fires in organizations. When you run into problems with supply chain, those suppliers will work with people who treat them like partners rather than treat them like adversaries. General Motors saw this in the Deming days when they were beating up their suppliers for lower and lower prices. And those suppliers started walking away from them when it came time to make innovative ideas and suggestions to General Motors. Managing how individual people and departments perform separately rather than managing how they work together is another fire starting approach that management uses. So Deming would say, although we do need to put out fires, that doesn't produce improvement. All it does is leave with a building that still has the potential to catch fire again.
So what, I know you mentioned it briefly before, but could you share with us what exactly is the system of profound knowledge? How do we apply it as a system? And is it for a separate lens that we are looking through when we talk about the system of profound knowledge?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And let's talk about each of the areas of profound knowledge. There are 4 areas of profound knowledge. One of the key ones that we need to deal with and learn, and might be most challenging for a lot of managers because our management systems really don't appreciate a system, is appreciation for a system. We learn from appreciation for a system that effective management of a system requires knowledge of the interrelationships between all the components of the system and of the people who work within it. Another area of profound knowledge is understanding variation. And there's extremely valuable information to be extracted from variation. However, most managers are unaware of how to perceive or even make use of this information. Oftentimes we just hear about ups and downs and differences from day to day or week to week or quarter to quarter, rather than looking at the behavior of the system over time and learning to distinguish sources of variation that come from the system or come from some sort of special cause. The theory of knowledge teaches us and helps us understand that management in any form is prediction. So when we think about this, our plans, our agendas, our standard work processes, our work rules, and even what most people will call decisions are all management predictions. It's possible to perform better as a manager when you learn how to apply the theory of knowledge to your management predictions and decision making. And the final area of the system of profound knowledge is psychology, which helps us understand people and their numerous interactions. So good management will apply an understanding of psychology to support joy in work and to nurture people's innate positive attributes. So when we think about this, this is kind of a backwards way to look at what's happening with the system of profound knowledge, but integrated, they're all one view or one lens that allows us to see our organizations in a different manner. It's like a version of fish that don't know they're in water. We have an opportunity to see our organizations in a different fashion from an outside perspective that is provided by the system of profound knowledge. And Dr. Deming said, one need not be immanent in any part, nor in all 4 parts, in order to understand it and to apply it for transformation. And what he meant by transformation is from the present style of Western management to one of optimization. So this is a way that's important for us to appreciate. First of all, we can't really learn all of it all at once. And so there's some version of sequential learning that's required. So we might attack or learn about how to apply a particular aspect of profound knowledge to a problem. And in the academy that we teach, we have a project that we use to practice with throughout our entire academy experience, a work-based project that people select to improve something in their own work processes. And as we learn about each area of profound knowledge, we begin to apply that in a different way to that project. And we learn how to look at things from all these perspectives and begin to develop this lens that we see these things in an integrated fashion rather than separate, distinct disciplines.
Each itself being a system within a system.
It is, yeah. You could spend a lifetime focusing on any one of these areas, and that's one of the challenges that I think we run into with some management teaching. And one of the things that's profound about the way what Deming taught was all these views and perspectives, these areas of knowledge can be applied to our problems and issues that we're dealing with. And not one is dominant, and not one is the only way to look at it. So he integrated these areas. One of the things he's done with this system of profound knowledge is he's balanced out the need to have bottom line success, have this business survive, with the idea that people matter. So there's this balance that he provides in his approach that a lot of other management methods don't. A lot of management methods are overwhelmingly in favor of addressing the bottom line only and tend to ignore the needs of the people and their perspectives.
That provides a great segue into this whole question also, that the next question that we have, not to cut, but also just to help you to frame your response, because I wanted to pull out the whole question of the psychology and the human factors. I do, like you, agree that most other management theory seems to ignore the whole question of the importance and the value of people, mindsets, mental health and well-being and all of these things, but I would also like to get a better appreciation of the whole component of psychology. And does the psychology in the theory of, in the system of profound knowledge, also speak to biological factors, stress, things that are happening within the human anatomy and the human factors, help us to understand and appreciate, this element of the system of profound knowledge in terms of psychology, motivation, and all of that.
I think it's interesting. So one of the things that we might ask is, well, what's meant by this question? What are we trying to get at when we're looking at psychology, especially in relation to biology and other human factors? We have only our biology to work with, right? So that's, so our brains, our mental functioning are all elements of the biology that we've inherited. So the way we interact with the world, the way we learn from the world is something that's built into our biology. In fact, we're fortunate in the fact that as human beings, we're designed to learn. We have an innate curiosity about the world. As we grow and develop, we're always experimenting and trying things out. My grandson, when he was 4 and 5, would just love to run around the house and say, let's do an experiment. And we would try something else out. He'd throw things at the fan and see if it would stick and how long it would stay up there. He would try and throw things up the stairs that were round balls and see if he could make them stick. He would throw things into the trees and see if they would come down. Like he was constantly
a true scientist.
Yeah, he's just, and when you look at kids, they're pretty much miniature scientists all the time. Hey, let's try this. Will that work? At some point, we kind of lose that. That gets kind of trained out of us when we learn, oh, don't do that, or someone's not going to like what you're doing. However, we're innately drawn to learn, and it's learned from making our predictions. So one of the reason I'm showing these 2 books by Jeff Hawkins is, his research teaches us that our brains do not learn a single model of the world or a single model of anything, but the brain creates countless models of the world and then continually revises them through our experiences. And if anyone's aware of the plan, do, study, act cycle, that's exactly how that process works. We have a model or a theory or an idea about how something will work. So we make a prediction, we run a small little test, we try it out, and then we evaluate. Did the results of our little test match our prediction? If there's a difference there, well, first of all, if it matches, we didn't learn anything because we already knew it, we predicted it. So there's no learning when you predict something accurately. There's a possibility for learning when we try something out and it doesn't work the way we expected it. Now we can ask ourselves, well, what is it about our theory that was wrong and needs revision? And so that's an aspect of our biology that's built in. And yet we tend to forget that as we operate in our organizations, that that's a way to learn. In fact, Hawkins says you can't learn anything about the world without movement. And that's why in the academy we teach that in order to improve something, you have to move something. And that could be a line of code. It could be authority from one decision maker to another person. It could be a grouping of people. You change those. Anything that happens to produce improvement requires some version of movement in order to produce a change that could produce improvement. So these models that we have include how we see and interpret our interactions with other people and the world around us, and we're constantly revising those. And so it's very important for us to pay attention to what you're asking about, is what's our biology and other human factors. Now, in the world of organizations, there are people that experience an abundance of stress in their workplace. We just had a person go through the academy who was recovering from a stress-induced coma from her workplace. It was so bad that she suffered a debilitating episode that put her in a coma for a few days. And now she's working to get away from that. And there's story after story that Jeffrey Pfeiffer, Professor Pfeffer, wrote in his book, Dying for a Paycheck, is we create so much stress in our organizations that this long-term stress that we induce in the way that we decide to manage and work with people causes a stress that we're not built to experience. Our bodies create stress responses that are supposed to respond and deal with stress in momentary situations. So our fight, flight, or freeze kind of responses are built for stressful situations that come and go, that are episodic, but not long-term. Long-term stress causes us lots of problems. John Medina, in his book, Brain Rules, suggests that there's a 3-part definition for stress that's very useful. It turns into an operational definition. One is there's an observable response to the stressor, meaning that someone can measure it. So it could be blood pressure, it could be respiration, it could be perspiration or sweat. It could be a variety of different things that show up as something we can measure as a measurable response to that stressful situation. And there's another aspect to that, is that, so part number 2 of that definition is, if we had a choice, we would turn down that stressor. So if someone is for instance, our annual reviews, they might be a huge stressor for a lot of people. And could I turn down the experience of stress in that situation if I had a choice? So there's a measurable response. There's a choice to turn it down. And the other third factor that causes significant stress is that we don't feel we're in control of that situation. So we feel helpless. So the combination of those 3 factors create tremendous stress. And when we look at our workplaces, it's unfortunate that many management practices purposely induce that type of stress on people. And so that's an element of our biology and our perspective of how to what causes that problem. One of the ways that Deming's teachings help us get around that is looking at factors of motivation. Mary Jenkins, when I learned from her about motivation, she said motivation comes from 3 characteristics: collaboration, choice, and challenge. And so the choice is a factor automatically that drives down that stressor, according to John Medina's definition. Collaboration includes our ability to work with other people. It certainly is beneficial when you're able to have support in doing work rather than having to be a single performer, an individual performer. That's very challenging. And then challenge is one of those areas where, when we read about flow from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, is that there's a balance between it's too boring and I'm not engaged, and it's too challenging, the task that I'm doing, and I don't know how to do it. But in the area where there's flow, the challenge level that's best for us is something that keeps us going. This is a task that we really like to do ongoingly. So can we work with our people so that we can develop jobs and job functions and job boundaries that include our ability to collaborate with others, have choice in what we're doing, and then that creates challenges for us, that we're not just doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again, but something that acknowledges who we are as human beings, that we want to learn, we want to grow and develop, and we like to be challenged in a way, but not too much, like that. So these are all factors that I think are important as we learn about the psychology of who we work with. And it's an area that's very critical that Deming introduced to us that I think a lot of managers don't pay enough attention to.
As you spoke, I actually saw the connections also to variation,
Mm-hmm.
and and also requiring you to look through that lens of variation as you look at psychology, because everyone is different.
Yes.
Everyone is triggered by different things, different
Yes.
reality. And
Yep.
you also have to look at variation there. That's what I saw as you also spoke. One of the things that this was not a pre-prepared question, but it's actually something that came out. How important is this whole psychology piece now in relation to the practice of leadership, quality, management? How important it is for persons that are practicing to develop their skills, develop their understanding of this psychology and the human factors and the human elements as they pursue transformation, change, and quality improvement.
Mm-hmm. Deming taught that a leader of quality and transformation should understand the psychology of individuals, the psychology of groups, the psychology of society, and the psychology of change. And when you look at those different combinations, the psychology that he's suggesting that we learn about is much different. So how you and I interact as on one-on-one is very important. If I'm coaching you, if I'm leading you, if I'm trying to mentor you, as if I'm a supervisor or manager and you're someone that I'm accountable for, then it's very important that I be able to interact with you as a person. If we're leading a team and you're a team leader on a team that's trying to produce a result, it's very important for you as a leader to understand the dynamics of teams. How do groups work together? What are the challenges and that groups face? What are the phases they go through in their team development? How do they deal with the dynamics of decision making and choice making? How do they evaluate their results? How do they introduce purpose into that situation? What are we trying to accomplish is the key question. And then in society, we're all part of a societal system that has different influences on us in different ways. And so understanding the psychology of what society brings into our organizations and our people is powerful. And then especially understanding the psychology of change within each of those areas is critical for us to learn as leaders. So leaders have to have the ability to use an understanding of psychology, but from those different perspectives. And those are the areas that Dr. Deming talked about. Now, he also mentioned that a leader has three sources of power. One is position power, and he says they shouldn't depend on position power, but they should use it to make change. They also said knowledge, and then their ability to interact or relate to people. So there's three areas of knowledge for us or personality. So there's those three areas of knowledge. He said leaders should depend on knowledge and personality rather than position authority, but they should use position authority if they have it to make positive change occur.
Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So what will you like to leave with our audience, and how can they reach you if someone heard something that is interesting and they wanted to reach out for support in their own organization's journey in applying these ideas? How can they connect with Eric and also the academy?
Great. I'm glad you asked that because I set something up here for that. So here we have, here's my name and my email address. I will be glad to answer any email questions that people have about anything that you and I have talked about today. And then if people are interested in learning more about the Academy, they can go to the IQI website, which is qualityandinnovation.org. You can register for the current Academy. The one that's coming up begins February 6th. It's an intensive course. It's not one for the faint of heart. We meet, as this schedule shows, daily. This is Eastern time. So this is Michigan, Eastern US time. For you guys, it'd be slightly before work, I suppose, in most days. Like it'd be 7 o'clock where you are, Chris. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm currently in Jamaica at the moment, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
7:47 a.m. and 8:45. But for the most of our audience will actually be in the UK, so it will be like a 5-hour difference in the
Oh,
UK.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, that's easier to do in the middle of the day, perhaps. And then we cover each of the areas of profound knowledge in addition to looking at what's the developing a project that we use. In fact, project development is part of the pre-work for the Academy, which is why we have January 20th as the deadline for registration. So you have enough time to read the new economics. That's one of our assignments. We presume that you will have read the book before we start the Academy. We don't read the book as we go through the Academy. That's our foundational level of knowledge, and then we build on top of that. And then we go through and begin to apply each of the areas of profound knowledge to our project. We run weekly PDSA cycles. So by the time you're done with the Academy, you've run at least 10 PDSA cycles. Then you also spend time after each day of conversation in the Academy. You go and teach somebody in your work network or your personal network about the concept you taught. So also by the end of the Academy, you will have had at least 50 teach to learn conversations with others. This helps deepen the learning that you do with the concepts. It also helps help you realize, oh, Eric said something this morning. I'm not sure I really understood that because I couldn't teach it correctly. Let me go back and ask Eric something more about that question. So an opportunity for coaching. So these are all opportunities for us to begin to deepen and apply our understanding of the system of profound knowledge in a way that actually puts us on the court. It takes us out of the stands. We're watching, we're reading about, we're not doing anything. Once we get on the court, we're doing something. And if you really want to understand your system, try to change it. Or if you really want to understand yourself, try and change yourself. There's the two aspects to this learning method that's very critical. It's challenging to try and make change happen either personally or organizationally. And the things that we run into are the things that we learn about. And then we learn how the system of profound knowledge helps us overcome or see through or around those barriers and produce something different than what would be our standard approach. So, Chris, I really thank you for, talking with me today, asking me these questions. I really appreciate the opportunity to get ready to answer your questions. And anybody else who wants to hear more about anything I've mentioned today, please just write me a note. I'll be happy to respond, or even set up a Zoom call, so we can have a one-on-one conversation. That would be great too.
Eric, I really want to thank you on behalf of the Chartered Quality Institute Deming Special Interest Group. I think what you have shared here has really been an eye-opener for me. And in the context of recently, we have been, put under pressure to look for a formula, look for a program, look for an instant put in. And I think what you have actually done here today has actually reinforced the relevance for me in Deming's ideas as they are, in the teaching as they are, because it really helps to unlock a new way of thinking, a new logic, a new way of learning, and to continually learn, to change and transform, whether it be from individual or organization. And I really want to thank you for that reinforcement.
Well, you're welcome, Chris. And I appreciate the work you're doing to continue Dr. Deming's message and share it. It's always important, I think, that we do our best to do that. But in order to do our best, we first need to learn what we should be doing. Sometimes doing our best isn't enough. And I think the learning that we're trying to do with understanding this approach and the profound system of profound knowledge is very important. And the work that you're doing to share it is also very important. So thank you as well.
Have a great day. I'm going to stop the recording.